good evening, and welcome to the Joy Reid Show. We're live tonight from the beautiful Colorado foothills, where we are currently enjoying the gorgeous weather, perfect weather, and the natural beauty of the wild, wild west. Want to big up everyone who is listening on Substack. Hello to our Substack massive. Also want to salute all of those in the podcast world that are watching us on those places as well, on Spotify. Hello, Spotify folks. We got one person in the chat saying, I think it was Walter Harris, saying it's his first time watching on YouTube. Welcome to the Joy Reid Show Nation. We appreciate you being here, Walter, and everybody else, all the ships at sea. Thank you all for tuning in. And of course, we are following all the many developments that are going on in the world right now in the news cycle that are coming down fast and furious, including, and I want to play for you this rather creepy admission over the last couple of days by Donald Trump, that there was, in fact, more to his falling out with Jeffrey Epstein than the two of them just fighting over a real estate deal. Now, I want you to listen to this video. It is a still with audio, because this was actually an audio transcript released by the White House. And this is Donald Trump during a White House gaggle saying that Epstein, quote, took people from Trump's Mar-a-Lago spa. Here it is.
So, Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. I'm just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Some of them.
Were some of them young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were young women?
What did they do? In the spa.
In the spa?
Yeah, people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told them, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Giuffre?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
Yeah, so here's the problem, Donald. Actually, Virginia Giuffre is the only person that we know of who was both abused and trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. And by the way, she was 14 when she was so-called taken from working as somehow an employee of some kind at the spa at Mar-a-Lago. She's the only person that we know that was both abused and trafficked by Epstein and was a former Trump employee. She's the only one. She was also the first Epstein victim to come forward and the most vocal. Now, I want you to listen to this video of the late Ms. Giuffre, who took her own life this April, talking about being trafficked by Epstein. Take a listen.
I was recruited at a very young age from Mar-a-Lago and entrapped in a world that I didn't understand.
So what did Donald Trump know about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes? And when did he know it? They supposedly fell out prior to Epstein's first arrest in 2006, supposedly over a real estate deal. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is apparently seriously considering a full pardon for the diddler. Here's a picture of them, two of them together in 1997. According to Page 6, he's considering pardoning him, very seriously considering. Why would he do that? It's kind of a weird thing to say that you're going to do, given what he was convicted of, which was trafficking women for prostitution, which weirdly enough is the same thing Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of in 2008. Same exact crime, only in Florida. Also weird, right? Given the fact that Trump has also made noises about maybe pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, who's the woman convicted of essentially pimping young, impoverished women like Virginia Giuffre to Jeffrey Epstein. And this after Ghislaine Maxwell, remember, whose father, Robert Maxwell, was a notorious Mossad agent, allegedly, after this lady met with the DOJ to talk about whatever it is she knows about all the things. and allegations that her camp, that her family, lawyers, etc., per Michael Wolff, may have been the source of the leak to the Wall Street Journal about that super special 50th birthday book for Epstein that Donald Trump supposedly drew a naked lady and used his marker signature as the pubic hair for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. All weird things. And joining me now to talk about all of those things is Michael Cohen, who was Trump's personal attorney for many, many years before his conscience caused him to speak out about Trump's dirty business dealings in 2019, after which he became the first victim of Trump's political prosecutions under Bill Barr. The same Bill Barr, who was the Attorney General of the United States when Jeffrey Epstein supposedly died by committing suicide. The same William Barr, whose father originally hired Jeffrey Epstein to teach math at a cushy private high school in Manhattan. Michael has got a great podcast out on Substack, very popular podcast called The Michael Cohen Podcast, which you should subscribe to tonight. He's also the author of a number of best-selling books, including Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice. Michael, my friend, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, my joy, it's been a while.
It's been too long, Michael. I hope you're keeping well. And you know, it's interesting. I'm so glad that you texted me the other day, and we hadn't, as you said, talked in a while. I've been really focused on doing this podcast and had my head down, but I have been thinking about you and had been concerned about you because of all the threats that Donald Trump has been leveling at various people. I think recently he's thrown in Oprah and Beyonce and whoever else is hurting his spirit at the time.
Beyonce and Reverend Al, our mutual friend.
Exactly.
And our mutual friend, Reverend Al. Yeah.
And our mutual friend, Reverend Al Sharpton. And he's sort of spouting off, but really because he's freaked out about this Epstein stuff. But you've already experienced what it looks like when Donald Trump actualizes his threats. So I just want to start out by asking, how are you doing? And what is, your level of concern at this point, because you are so vocal?
Well, I don't really have a level of concern anymore. After doing prison time, you sort of don't think about much. And while I'm back, now, of course, with my wife, I mean, it's never been a problem. We're married 31 years. I have my 2 children. With my relationship has not changed with them. I would say more than 90% of all of my close friends remained close friends. We did lose some. We have a handful that are members of Mar-a-Lago, have invited, us to go there for various different events, which we thank them, but we respectfully decline. I'm actually, I'm not going to stop speaking my truth. I'll tell you the part that sort of, Joy, bothers me the most. I've been very vocal. I've gone on many, many television shows, and they ask me questions about Jeffrey Epstein. They ask me many questions about Donald Trump and young girls, children. They ask me many questions about lawsuits that have taken place. And the part that I find disturbing, and it dismays me tremendously, is people on both sides of the aisle, and I'm talking more now to my fellow Democrats. And by the way, to those same people, I've been a Democrat basically my entire life. 1987, I started working for Congressman Joe Moakley of Massachusetts, and I was in college for 87 and then 88. What bothers me the most is that they don't even do a scintilla of research. Michael, you must know about this payoff that allegedly took place in 1990. Well, with all due respect, in 1990, I was in law school. All right. Oh, you must know about this one. Yeah, that took place in 1988. I was graduating high school. Well, what about the one in 2001? Yeah, what about it? I was right at that point in time. I was working for myself. I had a massive transportation and real estate company that I built. So I wasn't even in Trump's orbit. I didn't come into Trump's orbit until 2005. All right, which is at that point in time, I was at a major, major law firm here in New York as a partner and was doing outside work for Trump. I became the executive vice president and special counsel for Donald in 2007. And as I stated to many of the different moderators of these shows, to many journalists and substackers and show hosts like yourself, my joy. I never saw Jeffrey Epstein in the office. I never heard Donald speaking to him. I never met Jeffrey Epstein personally. I never spoke to him, never texted him, never emailed, never had any communication. I'm not even sure if I've ever even been, despite being a real local guy, and we live relatively close to one another. I never met him. I don't even think I was in a restaurant at the same time as him. I wouldn't know, but I have no idea. So when they ask me and they say, well, Cohen, you need to spill all the truth. Let me be very clear. My truth is not designed to attain your applause or your clickbait. My journey is to tell the truth, because as I continue to do that, the truth always rises, as Buddha said, right? The truth always rises, and we will one day, and hopefully soon, find out everything that we need to know about this Epstein file, because I do ultimately believe that Trump and his administration and the DOJ and Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche will have no choice but to release the file unredacted in its entirety, except, of course, for the names of the victims.
And I'm so glad that you gave us that timeline, because you're absolutely right. I think that people are conflating a lot of different eras. I just showed the 1997, Diddy Puffy video, photo with Trump. In that era, in the 1990s, and as you said before, you were involved. Donald Trump knew a lot of celebrities, including a lot of Black celebrities, and he would have them party with him at Mar-a-Lago. This was like a common thing. And Donald Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein in that era for sure. So maybe we might want to ask the diddler what he knows about what was going on, because he's the one who maybe is going to get a pardon out of all of this. And so the reality is that for you, though, the era in which you were working for Donald Trump is around the time when Melania Trump comes into the picture, when you're seeing Donald Trump get close to getting The Apprentice, right? This is close to when he gets The Apprentice, which he gets 2 years after Jeffrey Epstein.
No, when I was there, he was already
on The Apprentice. Okay, so
no. When I was there, he was already into, I think, season 2. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Perfect. Okay, so you're in that early Apprentice era when Donald Trump is really exploding as sort of a national celebrity, really, because he had been like a New York celebrity and he'd been here and there, but The Apprentice is what really kind of built his brand. But one of the questions that people have had specifically about Melania, and I don't know what you know about this because I don't know how involved you were in this aspect of sort of his world, is that Melania kind of comes into his life in a way that makes you literally look at how Trump was dealing with women. Let's set aside Jeffrey. It's hard to set aside Jeffrey Epstein, but for a moment, Donald Trump himself ran a modeling agency that only closed in 2017. He apparently represented Paris Hilton in that agency. He was around John Casablancas, who was accused credibly of preying on the models who were at Elite Modeling Agency, which was the agency where Ivanka was represented from the time she was 14 years old. He was around the guy who founded Karen Models, who was also credibly accused of preying on the very young models who were signed to Karen Models and who allegedly killed himself in France as he was being accused of sexual predation. You see where I'm going with this, Michael? Even if you say, okay, Donald Trump, I don't know what he knew about what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, but I would love you to talk about what Donald Trump's own behavior, his own behavior in that era, to me, is something it's interesting when you put it in the context of him being besties with a pedophile for 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, during that period of time, you're right, Trump model management, I saw the closure of it. It wasn't a successful modeling agency. They basically would use the women or the girls from whether it was Miss Teen USA, Miss USA, or Miss Universe. They would be part of that Trump model management. But remember, I believe that the marriage between Donald and Melania occurred in 2005. And that's around, again, the time that I just started to enter his orbit in terms of the fighting, the litigation, and so on that took place between himself and a board on a building that he had developed. So, I know the gentleman that you're referring to who took his own life, Jean-Luc. There are all sorts of rumors and stories about that as well. The one thing that Trump does is he actually hurts himself making comments that if he would just take a pause, or one of his enablers would engage him as I used to in conversation so that you keep him on a right track in terms of the thing he says. When he would say things as he did about if Ivanka wasn't his daughter, he would date her, making comments about going backstage at, the pageants and the models would be naked and so on, which is something that he talked about on Howard Stern. A lot of the stuff that he says for shock value. Now, I don't understand that concept. It's not my nature. It certainly is his. But I was one of 3 people who Donald Trump had on the board of directors for the Miss Universe organization. There was only 3. Donald himself, the CFO, Alan Weisselberg, and me. By the way, all 3 felons, by the way, which I think is kind of interesting since we're talking about this as a, I guess, as a bad thing, right? The 3 of us were the board. And I would travel with him for these pageants. Mostly, I wasn't able to go to the one in Russia, which is where so much is alleged to have occurred with, the tapes and so on, none of which has ever surfaced. And I looked for them, not because they were legitimate, because I wanted to find out if they were or weren't. Putting that aside, I too went backstage at the various different pageants, Miss USA. I never went to I don't think I ever went to a Miss Teen, but Miss USA, Miss Universe. And I went backstage because we would go to the office that was there, which had photos of each and every one of the girls. And there were certain rules and things that he was permitted to do. But let me be very clear. All right. I never saw a girl naked. I never saw any of the contestants even in their underwear or bra. I never even saw any of them in their bathing suits. I did see some of them in Miss Universe bathrobes and so on while they were getting their hair done. I have no clue what was or what was not under the bathrobes, but putting all that aside, I don't even believe that Trump actually saw it. I believe he was saying it for a shock value on Howard Stern. The problem with doing something like that, some of the comments he's making, like even the most recent one, which was, I never had the privilege of going to Epstein's island. We all can agree, regardless of what side of the aisle that you are on, that it is not a privilege to go to an island with underage children, all right, for the purpose of engaging in sexual relations with them. I mean, there's no privilege to that. Why he used that type of language, why he went to the back on Air Force One to engage the media when you know what they're going to be asking you, makes no sense to me. If I was still in his orbit, I would have put my arm around his waist, held him back, and said, boss, you can't go back there. All right? These are the questions that they're going to answer. And every time that you say something, you stir more controversy, more conspiracy theories where none exists. And if your intent, which we know it is to put an end to this conversation, how about just stop talking about it? Stop giving people reason to have more and more conspiracies.
But the question is why he can't stop and why he does things that seem to make it even more suspicious. The idea that you would pardon Puffy. Why? Given what we've learned through that trial, what he was doing to Cassie and other women, why would you talk about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell and saying you wish her well. All very strange things to do. And I'll ask you one other question, Michael, because the another Michael that we had on this show, Michael Wolff, has said that when Jeffrey Epstein in 2016 had a conversation that I believe Jeffrey Epstein's brother has also said he was a witness to, and that Michael Cohen either got from the brother or witnessed himself, that Jeffrey Epstein apparently went into his vault or went into his safe and took out photographs, maybe Polaroids, that according to Michael Wolff contained pictures of Donald Trump with very young women. No one can determine what age they were, but apparently in some compromising looking positions, and apparently a photo, per Michael Wolff, with a stain, quote unquote, on his pants. And that apparently Jeffrey Epstein said to his brother and maybe to Michael Wolff, if what's in my vault were to become public, they'd have to cancel the election, indicating, per his brother, that he had dirt on Donald Trump. And one other piece is that there is an allegation floating around out there, which again, I cannot confirm. I have not done this due diligence myself, so I'm not going to say it's factual. I'm going to say it is coming from this world of reporting that we're seeing from the Miami Herald, from Michael Wolff and others, that according to Jeffrey Epstein's brother, he says he had something on him, and that the timeline of Jeffrey Epstein first being accused, and I've read through that case, which is repulsive and gross, that first accusation in 2006 followed Donald Trump and him getting in a fight over a piece of real estate. Jeffrey Epstein wins, gets the real estate, and then not long after that, he gets reported by someone. Not saying Trump did it, but it's, the timelines. What do you think could be?
I don't think the way that you're describing it is accurate, because I too had Michael Wolff on my Mea Culpa podcast, and we had the same conversation. In fact, there was something that he advised me on that I was completely unaware. What Michael Wolff explained to me, as told to him by Jeffrey Epstein, is what caused the termination of the relationship was actually Jeffrey, more so even than Donald. Here's the reason why. There was a piece of real estate in Palm Beach that Jeffrey Epstein wanted to purchase. It was a nice piece of property on the water in Palm Beach, very close to Mar-a-Lago, and it was in foreclosure. He advised Donald about this piece of property because obviously Donald, being a real estate magnate, knows a lot about real estate, and he wanted his advice on it and how to navigate through these foreclosures with the bank and so on. It was actually Donald who won out on the bid. In fact, what I learned is that the property that they're referencing was the property 2 years later in 2007, 2008 that I was involved with, that was sold to the Russian oligarch Dmitry Rybolovlev for $95 million. Purchase price was $40 million. Now, here's something that I ultimately learned as well, that the individual who lost the property had actually bought that property from Les Wexner, who is who is one of, let's just say, Jeffrey's major backers, that the $60+ million townhouse that Jeffrey was living in was gifted to him for $1 by none other than Les Wexner. So, let me be very clear here. Jeffrey wanted that property. Donald came in, he pulled the trump on him, and he ended up with the property. That supposedly was the beginning of the end of the relationship. Now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Donald comes up with this new theory that he's now the hero of the story, that he fired or he got rid of Jeffrey from Mar-a-Lago because Jeffrey was a creep, that he was stealing these young girls that were working for Mar-a-Lago Spa at the time. Well, this is all new information that's coming out. It's information that is neither corroborated by anybody, nor, at least until this point, with no documentary evidence, no photos, no anything like that. Other than we do know that Virginia Giuffre, she worked at Mar-a-Lago. So here's the problem with the statement that Donald makes. And again, if I was in the orbit, I would have advised him not to come out with that statement. Let's assume hypothetically Virginia Giuffre worked for you. We'll acknowledge that. We'll acknowledge that Jeffrey Epstein stole her from Mar-a-Lago employ. Well, you must have known about Jeffrey's proclivity. Why did you allow it to happen? Right? I mean, you clearly knew what was happening, or you may have suspected. It was your comments that said Jeffrey liked the girls on the younger side. Why not step in? Why not do something which is what one would anticipate that an adult, or at least a boss, would do? Why would you let her even go there knowing what you know? And that, to me, is the downside of making these off-the-cuff statements. Now, I get what he was trying to do here. He wants to put himself out there as the hero of the story. Unfortunately, that's not how it plays out.
Especially since Virginia Giuffre, after she left Mar-a-Lago employ, was then trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein, and in her own words, used essentially as a sex slave internationally to international clients of Jeffrey Epstein. So you saved her from nothing. In fact, you delivered her. In fact, if you knew, as you said, she was being quote unquote stolen, you certainly didn't object in a way that helped her at all. And he said different employees were taken. Well, which other employees? Journalists should then start asking, well, which other employees were taken? Because that's one that we know was trafficked. Who else worked for you that wound up working for Jeffrey Epstein? He, as you said, he's begging more questions. I want to ask you one question that's a bit more personal to you, because your daughter has talked about sort of the weird kind of ways that Donald Trump interacted with her. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I wrote about it actually in my book, Disloyal. In fact, she went on CNN and discussed it. I was there. We were standing in an area that was outside of the front gate at Trump National, Bedminster, in front of the pool, which is just adjacent to the tennis courts. And my daughter was coming off the tennis court, and she was wearing one of those white skirts with, with one of the tennis tops and so on. And Trump looked at me and he said to me, he goes, "Do we not have the best looking members in this club? What a piece of ass." I turned around and I said to him, "Hey, boss, that's Samantha. That's my daughter." So he turns around and he goes, "Oh shit. When did she get so beautiful?" I said, "Well, she was born beautiful. She looks like her mother." Right? And let me say,
How
how
old was she at
definitively an inappropriate. 15. She was 15 years old. But look, there are many statements that have been made over the years regarding women by Donald. Good ones, bad ones, horrific ones. But I think we have to stay focused on the allegations versus the reality. Somebody can say stupid things and not cross the line to illegality. And I bring up the point, Trump made a very overt statement the other day on Air Force One, and I think it needs to be noted. When he said, and it's not the first time, it's actually the third over a period of 2 days. So saying it again repetitively, there's a reason he wants to get that statement out. And the statement he made was, again, that he was never on Epstein's island, right? And that was not just said once. It was said, I think, 2 or 3 times. There's a reason why he's saying it, because I do believe that he was never on Epstein's island. Now, people saying, fuck you, Michael, bullshit. You know, you're on the payroll. You must be back. You're scared. He must be coming at you. That's not true. I'm merely stating a fact. Knowing Trump as I do, which is probably greater than anybody else, which is what made my interview with Michael Wolff so incredible, because few people know Jeffrey Epstein like Michael Wolff does, and few people, if anybody, knows Trump as I do, the two of us together. But the point I'm making here is he knows that that fact is going to come out, and down the road, he will use that fact to exonerate himself from anything that could be in that file that would implicate him in any way, shape, or form. Because I don't believe that Trump was with any of these young girls in a sexual way. I just don't believe it. Could I be wrong? Maybe. Do I believe I'm right? Yes. Right? I wasn't there. I have no firsthand knowledge. And so I don't like to talk as a former lawyer, and I will get my license back hopefully soon. But as a lawyer, I try to delve into actual facts. Things that, for example, you know, there's documentary or corroborating testimony to back it up, because anybody could throw out a conspiracy theory. And, you know, Joy, I don't have to tell you, the problem with conspiracy theorists, they're never satisfied with the answer.
So then my final exit question to you, Michael, and I appreciate you giving us all this context. I think it's so key to get this personal information. As you said, few people know Trump like you do. What could then, knowing Trump as you do, be the motive for what really feels like a cover-up of whatever is in those files? If Donald Trump is blameless in the crimes or did not have knowledge of the carnal crimes being committed by his best friend for 15 years, why cover it up? Why offer to immunize or grant immunity to Ghislaine Maxwell? Why sue Rupert Murdoch over this birthday book? Just admit you were in the birthday book. Just admit you signed the book. Why does he seem to be covering up everything related to Epstein?
Joy, that, my friend, is the billion-dollar question. It makes no sense to me. You know, I was also on various different news stations talking about the Epstein 50th birthday card. Let me be very clear on two things. One, Donald Trump is not a doodler. One, he doesn't keep paper on his desk, nor does he have a computer on his desk. It's basically he gets pieces of paper, faxes, or printouts from his one of the secretaries or somebody. He responds on those back and forth. That's how he does his business. I've never seen him in the 12.5 years that I worked for him. I've never seen him doodle once. I've never seen him take a pen to a piece of paper and actually just draw even lines like circles or squares or whatever it is. Trump is not a drawer.
Doodles.
He's
like
not an artist. However,
but he actually sold doodles. Like he actually sold and signed pictures.
Well, he didn't sell the doodles. They donated them to charity.
For charity, but he made them.
Let me say, if I can turn around and sort of tell you what I believe, and I can tell you I'm almost 100% certain that I'm accurate. His girls that worked for him as executive assistants, every single one of them was an amazing artist, some of whom are just off the charts. I mean, phenomenal. Many of the signatures that you get, whether it was on a hat or a golf ball or a tie, the secretaries did it. Because you don't really think that Trump was sitting there signing 1,000 golf balls, all right, or thousands of these hats. So somebody sent him let's say Ghislaine sent him a paragraph, and he gave it, or Rona gave it to one of the girls and said, do something here that you think matches with the context of the verbiage that's in it. They came up with this sort of design. He did sign his name on it, and he probably colored in some lines so that he could turn around and say that he actually did it, right? Like the skyline of New York, the buildings in New York. He probably just went like this with his black Sharpie. That's probably what happened. Is it his? No more than it was Urte, right, who signed his name to a bunch of sculptures that he didn't even produce, right? I mean, it happens all the time. It was for a charity. Nobody at the time even thought that he was going to be running for president, let alone be a president twice. And so that's probably what happened. Why? Again, because you're asking the billion-dollar question. Why in the world are they not just dropping the file unredacted in its entirety, except for the victims' names? I have no idea. And why he keeps saying things that make him appear to be more guilty, I don't know that either. It's bad communication by his enablers. It's bad advice by these same people. And I'm going to tell you, they're pushing him down a hole that it's not benefiting him at all. Even his own MAGA base are beginning to turn against him.
Michael Cohen, we've kept you way over time, my friend. Thank you so much. There it is. You have given us the information. We can take that in and we can think it out and ruminate on it. And I am going to keep asking that question. Why the cover up? Why? Michael Cohen, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. Be well. Thank y'all for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe, share this channel. Make sure that everybody subscribes to the YouTube channel. 70% of people are lurking, watching these shows and not subscribing. Why would you do that? So make sure that you like, subscribe, and throw some comments. And thank you all for joining the Joy Reid Show. See you on the next one. And goodbye for now.